Welcome to Wabi Sabi Stories, with me, Coco Win. An exploration of people's unique, beautiful, and imperfect journeys, and the lessons learned along the way. My guest today is Annisa-Tiara, a writer, initiator, and leader by nature. She has adapted to thrive in life through thick and thin, and today she opens up about going through a traumatic life event in her teenage years, while tackling mental health issues and being diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome in 2023. I got to hear how she has embraced these hurdles and is not only advocating for, but is also continuing to inspire women facing the same health challenges. Here is our conversation. So yes, Annisa, thank you for joining the podcast today. How have you been?
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. I woke up this morning feeling super energetic because I felt like I'm looking forward to today. So yeah, thanks for having me here.
I'm so excited too. If you would believe me, I think just before recording this or reaching out to you, I've had a few people that were asking, "Oh, who's the next guest?" And this next guest should be Annisa. You should try to get her on the podcast. She has an amazing story to tell. So I was like, okay, yeah, let's see where we go with that. And then now you're here.
I'm very humbled by that. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah. So, Annisa, we're now in December 2023. Mm-hmm. It has been quite a year. But how has been this year for you?
My God. Right off the bat. This year have been very amazing and also very challenging at the same time. But to be honest, I think it's the challenges that makes it amazing. And I'm not lip servicing on that. It's really just looking back. There's just like a lot of growth happening. In the beginning of the year, I went back to Bangkok after getting married last year. And career-wise, I've been very, very productive this year too. Very happy. My stakeholders, as usual, are very happy too. I hope so. And there's a lot of learning there this year because I think this year is really about going back to the quote-unquote business as usual after like years of lockdown and transitioning back into how it used to be. But also, it's not how it used to be, So I think last but not least is on the health aspect. So I've recently been diagnosed with PCOS and with the type of, so there are several types or branches of PCOS in my understanding. Well, as for mine is with insulin resistance. So it is very closely related to type 2 diabetes symptoms, etc., etc. So I've just been trying, to adjust my whole life, my lifestyle, my intakes, food intakes, my relationship with food has drastically changed. My relationship with like working out has drastically changed as well. So those are bits and bobs of like what made 2023 for me.
For sure. I think as much as I've known you in the past year when we worked together as well, I think what you're saying now has been such a positive growth journey for you, even if all the different things that you've had to go through and the challenges that you go through with not just generally in life, but also in terms of health, in terms of a big life change, which is also, getting married as well. You talked a lot about being quite independent, and I can see you also advocating for a lot of things that you believe in. You're an initiator, you're a starter, you're a leader by nature. Growing up, bring us back to the younger Annisa. What was young Annisa like, and what types of what kind of personality did she have as compared to where you are now, or how much of your personality right now is reminiscent of the early childhood Annisa?
That's a very, very good question. Honestly, as since I was a child, I knew I wanted to be a leader. And it's not, I mean, when I was like maybe 5 or 7 years old, of course, the thought is like being a leader, meaning, oh, I want to be a police or like a doctor or like somebody who's very niche in their jobs. But I knew from the very, very beginning of my childhood, as much as I can remember, I want to be somebody who can help make change for other people or who can make impact to other people's life, no matter how it is, maybe through CSR, maybe through work, maybe through my own voice, my own experience and sharing, etc. I just knew that it had to be, it doesn't have to be that way, but like it's the path that I want to pursue. So I'm also very grateful that I have parents who really supported on that idea, even though obviously it's not clear until I was like maybe a teenager, and not to make this a little bit dark, but so I lost my parents to cancer. My mom first in 2012. I was 16, and then 3 years after, my dad passed as well because of cancer when I was 19. So my entire family also, even though they support me, etc., my extended family, even though they support me, etc., it also put me into a position where I have to take lead for myself. Where do I want to go and where do I want to grow? Now that I don't have somebody to, guide me or tell me what else to do, I have to take leadership and ownership of my own life. And this is something that I very happily share with a lot of people, because you can easily slip through a slippery slope of like grief, and then you just waste your life entirely.
Spiral out.
But I choose to continue paying respect to my parents and whatever efforts that they have put into me when I was a child, and grow into a leader that I am, quote unquote, supposed to be, or I wanted to be. Yeah. So with that entire journey, I think from childhood to teens to now as an adult, in retrospect, I can see that I have been building my path into somebody who wants to help other people. Yep. Basically, that's it.
Yep.
How was your mom and dad's parenting formative to your leadership capabilities or qualities, or for you being independent?
I can remember this as clear as day. I think I owe it to my mom, to be honest. Her parenting style is, she gives me what she called tough love. And I think a lot of, ambitious friends out there who are listening, or perfectionists, fellow perfectionists, and I'll get to this point in a little bit, can relate, is because when you have a tough, loving parent, or what I've learned as a tiger mother, through my, in like a class, I've learned that this type of parenting is called tiger mothering or tiger parenting. You learn to be a little bit perfectionist as well. And you sort of learned on what you can do to optimize the path that you are building. So my mother's tiger parenting really helped me understand my limits, my strengths, my weaknesses. I think it's as simple as when I wet myself in bed when I was like 5. I knocked on my parents' door early in the morning at like 5 or like 3, I forgot. But then I cried. I said, "Oh, I wet my bed. Can you help?" And then my mom was like, "Go clean it yourself. You're a big girl. Take care of yourself." And when I shared this story with a couple of my friends, they would be like, "Oh my God, your mom is so harsh." But honestly, I mean, obviously, when I was like a 5-year-old, I was crying. I was sad that, oh, my mom does not love me. But in retrospect, I'm now 27. Take a look back into that memory with my therapist, etc. I'm very grateful that was like the experience, because Then it helped me build this personality of like, okay, I actually can do this for myself. I actually can be a little bit independent instead of dependent to somebody else. So this shape, this independent Anissa, even when she's a child, it helped her move through life also independently. And I think it built up this character of taking initiative. And to be honest, if you, from what I have been hearing or what I've been learning through podcasts and books, if you want to be a leader, you have to dare to take that initiative. And I think that core memory from what my mom taught me, it helped build me that confidence of, oh, I can be responsible for myself. I can be independent and I can move forwards from this. And yeah, and that was my mom. Now, my dad is a whole different story because obviously I'm his daughter, and the relationship between father and daughter, he spoiled me a lot. And by spoiling, meaning it's not by gifting or anything, but more to like a little bit softer than my mom. So a mixture of that really provided me a nurture of I can be independent, but I can also be soft to myself. I can be a strong character. Oh, but also I have to forgive myself for my mistakes. So I think I am very blessed to have that kind of, household where I can learn from my mistakes and move on.
I can definitely see now that you've told me the story of how your mom taught you as a 5-year-old. I can definitely see that quality while I'm working with you. And I can now see whenever Anissa's taking action and Anissa's initiating something, that memory is somehow unconsciously ingrained in you, and that's helping you to kind of drive forward and to start these projects, to initiate and to get that success. I want to ask about how you dealt with the passing of your parents. Now, as a 16-year-old teenager, or any age for that matter, everyone handles death differently. Everyone handles passing of family relatives very differently. As a 16-year-old, how did this affect you? And did you have the means or the know-how to process this?
Know-how? Absolutely not. And you're right, like dealing with a passing of somebody that you love, especially if it's your parents, it is something that will always take you by surprise. So my mom was sick for 4 years before I was eventually, quote unquote, prepared for her passing, and all I wanted for her was to, be relieved of her pain and then be a little bit more in peace, etc. So I think throughout the 4 years of struggling, seeing her struggle and trying to champion this, like it's a war, right? With cancer, it's always a fight and a war. And she was such a fearless warrior, to be honest. I was there and my father was there through all of those 4 years. And so it quote unquote prepared me a little bit to let go. But after she passed, obviously it's not an ideal situation because, of course my dad was sad, I was sad. We went into a little bit of a depression hole for, I think, quite a while, over maybe like a year. And I think I was in high school still. And then it was just very heavy at that time. I can remember that it felt like there's rain cloud following you everywhere you go before you go to sleep. When you wake up, it just gets better, or the rain cloud faded over time. But what really helped, what really, really helped, was two things for me. The first one is I write about it. I became a writer because of it. I published my first novel because of it. And I shared a lot of it through my socials, and I read a lot of literature in relation to it. And I just let it sink into you, because when you write it, you live it again and again and again, and eventually you sort of build strength against it. And to help with that, the second item that helped me so much was talking about it. At first, I was very, very shy to talk about it, because I don't know what made me so fearful of, crying and showing my weakness. Obviously, don't show your weakness to just some random stranger, because people can take advantage of you. But find somebody that you trust. And back then, I have this very best friend. Her name is Olive. I still love her until today. She's amazing, an amazing, amazing friend. I shared with her everything. And I also shared with a couple of other, friends and families. And that really helped. That really helped, because when you share, you sort of like let it go a little bit. And even if you need to cry, you cry. That's fine. If you need to yell, scream, whatever, express it, express it. The more, what I realize now, the more I feel it, the more I make peace with it. But the more I run away from it, it's gonna get to you eventually. So yeah.
I think that's super powerful, because as teenagers or someone in their formative years, it's not just difficult in terms of processing emotions, but I think to find the language and the means, or even the know-how, to know what this emotion is. I mean, we know that it's grief, we know that it's sadness, but there's so much nuance to it. But at the same time, to be able to find the support network and to know what works for you. I think what fascinates me about this is you found that these two things, journaling and opening up to a close friend, such as Olive, was something that helped you to find relief in this. How did you start knowing that journaling and talking was actually helping you? And what was that process in finding these two different means of you to process this, I would say, life-changing moment?
That's a very good question. I think I was very lucky, because in high school, I went to an international high school, and there is this one curriculum called English literature. Every single day, I look forward to that class, period. A lot of my friends were like, oh my God, English literature, like it's so boring. We're gonna uncover what Shakespeare meant by this play, or like by this poem from the 1600s. Like, nobody cares. But I was like, I care. I love it, because in words, there's metaphors, there's things that you cannot explain clearly with words, and you just like portray how you feel towards it through a poem or through a play. And through that classes, I eventually learned and understood that the writers of those literature held a specific meaning and feeling and emotion behind all of their words of choices. So from that, I was wondering, maybe I should just start writing how I feel, not explaining it, without writing, oh, I feel sad today because I feel like I miss my mom. No, but I can write something that's a little bit more nuanced, like, the sky is gloomy today and I wish you were here. And nobody would have to encrypt that immediately or understand that immediately, and it could just be for me and myself and maybe somebody else who can interpret it in a different way. Therefore, that person can be impacted by my thoughts and feelings as well without me telling them how it actually is. So that discovery, that experience of the English literature class is really what helped me understand that I love writing. I love it. I love storytelling. I love telling people emotions and making people feel emotions, because eventually we all have a little bit of grief inside of us. And it's not necessarily a grief of losing a parent, or it could be as simple as I fail my math class, or I miserably fail my chemistry class. And this is real, by the way. I in my end of year learnings, I score 36 out of 100 in
Oh, wow.
chemistry.
Okay.
So, that kind of grief, even if it could be superficial, I can write and I can let people understand and interpret it in their own version of grief. So yeah,
Yep.
that's that.
Yep. I maybe wanted to share, one story of mine through me trying journaling as well. I think it's really important that you say that you're writing not exactly how you're feeling, but whatever it is that you have in your head, and you're putting it down on paper or your laptop or whatever. And when you said, oh, the sky is gloomy today and I wish you were here with me. That really struck with me, because I wrote something like that in my journal with the passing of my grandfather. And it was one of those things where you weren't there to have been with him, but you felt that impact in some way. And somehow or rather, it was also difficult for me, because at some point I was writing something, but I was writing with the intention that, oh, what if somebody read this? But that's not really the point. The point is, how are you processing whatever it is that's in your head that's unprocessed? Let it flow through paper, still be it unprocessed, unfiltered, but be the truest of whatever it is, downloading straight to
Agreed.
down to paper.
Agreed.
So-
1,000%. And to be honest, with journaling, I eventually learned that is it's like the ideal quote unquote intention when I met my therapist, but that's for another story. And she basically mentioned like, hey, with your writings and your journaling and your love for literature, you don't need to think it for others, but you need to think it for yourself. And again, in the most genuine form that you feel, you just pour onto it. And yeah, amazing.
I'm curious, in Bahasa Indonesia, is there a means for you, or is the language rich enough for you to be able to express these? Because you also say, you were really excited about going for English literature. Did you write your journals in Bahasa or in English?
And this is going to sound embarrassing for me, because to be honest, I write it in English, just because of the exact same reason that you were saying. I believe Bahasa Indonesia is such a rich, soft language if you learn the literature properly. But unfortunately for me, the type of Bahasa Indonesia that was exposed to me is obviously my day-to-day, because it's my mother tongue. And then also Bahasa Indonesia language, which is a little bit more about language structure, etc., etc. So it's a little bit more formal.
It's a little bit rigid.
Correct. So whereas when I learned English literature, I was exposed to something that's more flowy, more metaphor-y, more euphemism. This kind of, it impacts me in my later life differently. So for example, if I were to speak to my Indonesian guests, I can very formally speak in very, very good and proper Indonesian. But at first, when I transitioned from high school to university to my early stages of my career with internship, and I have to create a report of something in English, I write it way too storytelling. Whereas my bosses previously were expecting me to write something more, rigid and more formal. So it's a little bit of here and there. And I think if for anyone listening out there who wants to, learn a little bit more on how to make the best of both worlds, obviously you have to expose yourself to different types of literature and their languages. So yeah.
The innate marketer it comes out of you.
Yes. Yes, correct.
Yeah. So it's really interesting, and why I asked this question is also because I have friends of mine that I talk to about some of them go to therapy as well, talk therapy. I've gone to therapy as well at a really low point in my life, and the medium that we spoke was English, and I was very curious to find out why, for example, why don't I go to a Burmese therapist rather than someone that spoke English, for example, and it was the language and the articulation of these unprocessed emotions that we don't have a culture to say these out.
Agreed.
And also we don't have the means to do that, right? It's still quite stigmatized, and people will be supportive on the outside, but it's still a very stigmatized type of thing. So it's also difficult for us to express these nuanced emotions through our native language.
Agreed.
And that's why I asked a little bit about that.
100% agreed. And to be honest, I think with English you can get a little bit more neutral, and separate yourself from your truest native language, right? And the stigma that is tied to it.
Yep.
I agree with you. I think Southeast Asians like us, we still have a little bit of stigma towards, mental health. But yeah, I see it growing though.
Yep, for sure.
Stay tuned and we'll be back with part 2.
I want to talk about another really major life moment for you this year. And you mentioned about this before. This year you were diagnosed with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. For the people that don't know what this is, can you explain a little bit about what this is and walk us through what this means for you day to day? What are the misconceptions and how does your daily life look like with PCOS?
To be honest, I need to educate myself more into what PCOS in the medical field, because obviously I don't have a medical background. So what happened was, I think it all began when in 2020, as a woman, obviously we all know that we have monthly periods, and that is not discussed enough about what's normal and what's not. So obviously I'm starting to only see like, in 2020 when there's a lockdown, I was stressed and my period is irregular. So I went to the doctor, OBGYN back in Malaysia, and then she was like, we've been seeing a lot of these cases starting with, COVID. I think everyone is just stressed. And this type of thing is considered now normal. And then she was just like dismissing it. And then she said, maybe you should try going to a therapist. And I was like, maybe she's right. I'm just going to go to a therapist. So I went to my therapist. Obviously, I felt better with my grief, with my stress, frustrations, being confined, etc. But my underlying issue still, it didn't go any further. It didn't go any better. It didn't regress, but it didn't progress as well. So I ignored it completely until I moved to Bangkok. And then I started noticing, oh my God, I am gaining a lot of weight. I used to be in my very ideal of 60 kilograms, and then within a span of a year, I gained 15 kilograms. And I was like, okay, maybe I just need to exercise more. And then I exercised more, I started jogging, but I noticed like after every single jog or every single cardio, instead of feeling good, like how, YouTube or TikTok or Instagram Reels show you you're gonna get adrenaline, you're gonna feel the runner is high. Instead of that, why do I lay in bed, sleep the next 3 hours, and I feel like complete garbage? And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna ignore this. Maybe it's just my wrongdoings, and I'm just gonna do something else like yoga. So I continued doing yoga. It felt good, etc. But again, my period is still missing here and there. And then that was 2021, and then 2022, I started. I think about June 2022, it was where everything went to crumble. I started feeling extreme exhaustion. Brain fog was insane, and then I was just very out of it. Like I felt like, that leader that we were talking about, the spirit of being a leader and a motivator and whatever I wanted to do in life, it was like a light switched off. And I just felt like I was not myself. I felt like I lost myself. I lost my mojo. I lost my spirit at work. I became this a little bit more of an introvert. Eventually, I just locked myself in, and I separated from the entire Bangkok life with my friends outside work, my friends at work, and just like do nothing and cry in bed. And then I went into a little bit of depression, and I was like, this is not real. Like, what is this? I've been doing everything right. And then at that time, my husband's, back then, Alice, the sister of my now husband, she was learning about this, not only about PCOS, but basically she's learning on how to be a health coach, an alternative health coach. So John, my husband, was like, maybe you should speak to Alice. And so I spoke to Alice, and then she was like, okay, Anissa, here's a few things that I want you to fill in. Tell me a little bit more about this and that. She was such a sweetheart. She listened to me entirely, and she even listened to, some of the things that I have been gaslighting to myself that is not real. But she's like, Anissa, you are very validated. Don't worry, I'm here to listen to you. Don't judge yourself. Just tell me how you feel. After that intake session, she came out with a couple of diagnoses that I should double check with an actual medical doctor. So she told me one of this is probably PCOS. So I went to a clinic. I told her, hey, I got this diagnosis. Can you double check for me? Check. A lot of blood checks, a lot of ultrasounds, this and that, confirmed I have PCOS. So it took me from 2020 until November 2022 to get heard. And then it took me until actually February 2023 or May, I forgot, to be 100% diagnosed with PCOS with insulin resistance. So how crazy is that for us women to have this reproductive organ that could go crazy and just being dismissed by the traditional doctors and hospitals? And it's really something that I now advocate so much, because not only me, there's a lot of women who are advocating for PCOS now, because again, sometimes we are just not being heard, and we're just told that we're crazy and we need to go to a therapist. So yeah,
I've heard that PCOS is one of the most, if not misdiagnosed, most dismissed diagnoses as well. And what I've heard is 5 to 10% of women are impacted by PCOS, and a majority of them don't get diagnosed until very late.
Yep.
Which is very surprising. But what I see about your story, and what I see about and looking through your Instagram as well, you're very vocal about this. Ever since you were diagnosed, there's a lot of changes that you've made in terms of your lifestyle, your cooking, how you also share your story with other people as well. What's interesting to me is, I think the timeline that you spoke was when I was working alongside you. For those listening, just for a little bit of context, we worked in, not necessarily in the same team, but we worked in the same, so to speak, squad. We worked in the same region, which means Anissa and I got to work very closely together. Anissa was on the marketing side. I was more on the sales side. But I remember a few moments in time where you would tell me, and this is very, very few times where I've had this discussion where, hey, Anissa, how are you? And, you would go, oh, Coco, I'm not feeling myself today. It's, can we maybe have this conversation a little bit, some other time? I didn't know that this was what you were going through at this time. But what I'm more interested in is how, because this is not within your control, right? How did you deal with this while you're also in the process of handling a high pressure type of role, multi-stakeholder type of role? You're some extent, you are also the face of the company in many different ways. What was this duality like for you?
Oh, fantastic question. And thank you for acknowledging the times that we worked together. And to be honest, in the role that I am sitting now, it was a tough challenge. A very, very tough challenge, especially in 2022, because 2022 was the first year of me completing my work with this said company. And of course, I wanted to, prove myself and be the best. So what happened was I sort of put a little bit of this, health challenges to the side, and really focus on quote unquote being perfect. So that is the duality of it. Now, when it comes to, is it the right thing to do? Honestly, in retrospect, it is not. It was not. But that's part of, learning how to adjust with this type of lifestyle, right? This is part of learning your boundaries and everything else for yourself too. So what I learned, sitting now in December 2023, looking back into 2022, what I learned was I was supposed to be a little bit kind to myself. If I don't feel like myself, like I spoke to you and to some other stakeholders too, like, I'm very sorry, I'm not feeling like myself today. I will deprioritize this conversation for tomorrow. That is a level of me being, kind to myself and building boundaries. The next thing that I was very lucky for, not only having like a colleague or being able to set boundaries for myself and understanding colleagues, I also have a very, very understanding manager. So again, the communication is really the key. When you are transparent to, for example, your manager or your colleagues and some other stakeholders, you can just say like, oh, I'm feeling sick today. I apologize, but I have to deprioritize a couple of stuff. That really helps. That really, really helped. And on some days though, how I deprioritize myself is because I know there are a couple of work stuff that I need to prioritize because the stakes are super high. If I don't do this the quote unquote perfect Anissa way, it will tank. And only specifically to those type of, projects, I need to, okay, let's rub off this fog for now, put on my makeup, put on 10 pumps of perfume for you to poison yourself.
Whatever it is, whatever it takes.
It is whatever it takes. Drink a lot of caffeine. Just go to the office and show up.
Yep.
And focus on that. And then, but to be honest, that's also not the very ideal way to go about it, because after that you tank a lot. And I personally have tanked a lot of times, but I think my final I mean, my lowest tanking was in November, and that was when I finally reached out to Alice to get diagnosed. But yeah, so if you ask me about the duality of working with a high pressure job, where I have to be the face of a lot of things together with the rest of the team, and then also to be somebody who's dealing with this new challenge, health challenge, PCOS, I think my first learning is to set a boundary for yourself. 2 is to be very kind to yourself. And 3 is to drink a lot of water and eat. Eat your lunch. I think you have seen me skipped my lunch multiple times, and I will never, for the love of God, repeat that mistake ever again. Nor I will tell people to, oh, just skip your lunch and do your work. Absolutely not. I will do that otherwise, and I will like encourage, let's at least have a 15-minute cracker break, and then let's go back to work if necessary. But yeah.
Yeah, skipping lunch for the for perfectionism and for for success is we've done it sometimes, but
Yes.
we tend to take it a little bit too far.
Yes. Yes.
You're reflecting on this now in December 2023. Did you know at that time that this was the cycle that you were going through?
I didn't. I should have. Well, no, I don't want to put that pressure on myself. I don't want to say I should have known. I didn't know. I didn't know, and I did my best with what I knew. And my best was putting on a show and tanking,
Have 2
sleeping.
masks on.
Correct. Yeah, I
and,
have 2 masks on. But yeah, I would not encourage it. But also, I will not be encouraging people to succumb to their situations. Whatever you have to make do, you make do.
Yep.
That's that.
You're very transparent about your journey. You talk about your PCOS journey from the time you got diagnosed. You post a lot about how you're also going through daily with this as well. You're also advocating for other women that are also going through this too. You're a writer by nature, but I want to know how you found comfort in sharing this story with others. This is a very vulnerable story of yours too, but you've decided that you wanted to share it with others. How did that process look like?
Oh my God, Coco, I love this question so much because I actually got this question from a couple of people, especially growing up with a father who said, Anissa, don't trust people too easily. Don't share your secrets too much. But I was like, I grew up and I was like, nah, I don't want to follow you. I want to make mistakes for myself and I want to overshare and see who sticks around. Although, obviously, that stubborn belief of mine is obviously not not ideal too. But the process of it is really being genuine and wanting to help others. That's it. Like, I don't have any other answer to that. I really just want to help others go through the things that I have went through from my perspective, from my experience, just in case maybe one person is like, oh, I have not tried this before. Anissa is right. Let me just like try. Even though if I was proven wrong, honestly, as long as I provide like a specific, not a specific, as long as I provide like a different angle or a new angle that other people have not experienced, yeah, I'm just grateful for it.
It's almost like you're nurturing your inner child now.
100%, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you are very, very right.
You know, the child that wants to create impact in the world.
Exactly.
And say, okay, I don't know what this is, but I want to do like, I want to make impact. I want to make people feel good, and that's exactly what you're doing with your platform now.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yep.
And this is such an amazing story because all the videos that you post are also like there's a lot of positivity in it, but there's also a lot of realism in it as well. And so from as much as I can speak for the audience as well, I think this is something that I think a lot of people will be very grateful for, to see someone going through this as well and taking stride in these challenges. I want to talk a little bit about you as a reader. You're a very avid reader. You know, and maybe this is also coming from the inner child that also likes English literature and whatnot. You recommended a book to me, which is The Culture Map.
Yep.
Breaking Through Invisible Boundaries of Global Business by Erin Meyer. I've read that book, and I think it's very interesting about the insights of how different cultures work with each other and whatnot. I think what you mentioned to me was when we were working together, we were working in a global team. We were working with different regions, different cultures too. You mentioned that this was probably one of the best books that you had read this year that has helped you to navigate the corporate life. Could you maybe talk us through like what that experience with you for you reading the book, and also for you to actually like start to use these techniques within the workplace?
So the reason why I was reading that book is like what you mentioned, we work in a very global team. There are countries I have previously never worked before together with. So I think it goes back to my experience in Malaysia. So I moved to Malaysia in 2020 up to end of 2021. I was working as an international marketer for a small agency. And there is where I learned, oh my God, a lot of people coming from so different backgrounds have such different ways of communicating. At first, I was shocked when, for example, I was speaking with somebody from the US, and then they were so upfront, no, no sugar coating, no nothing, just like immediately, oh, I don't like this, can you please fix it? And I was like, oh my God, this guy is so rude. What? But after going through that for a year and a half, I was like, this isn't rude, it's just culture. I need to be a little bit more educated to how to collaborate with different types of culture. So that is how I found this book. I was also being referenced by my ex-colleague in Malaysia, and she was like, I think with your role, you're gonna love this book. You're gonna learn a lot from it. So reading Erin Meyer's The Culture Map, I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what happened before. This was exactly the situation. This was exactly how I faced. This was this and that. And a couple of people that I talked to about this book, they were like, oh, basically you're a racist. And I'm like, no. It's not about being a racist. Being a racist is when you look into somebody's skin or background or this and that, and you judge them immediately. But with this book, you are reading about them, their culture, and respecting their boundaries and how they are as a colleague, right? So it's more to being respectful than being somebody that's judgmental, because we don't want that. We don't want to work with people like that. So reading that book, implementing it is basically one thing. I stopped taking things personally, because there could be, I have a colleague in Australia who's very upfront as well. And growing up in Indonesia for 20 plus years, I was like I surround myself with people who was like, oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, sir, this and that. And they're just very polite.
The soft language that you were speaking
Exactly,
about, right?
precisely. Yeah. So when somebody from Australia was just like, oh, Anissa, can you just do this and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, no, please and thank you, eh? So I'm like, okay, maybe that's a little bit rude, but also it might be the culture there. So understanding different countries that speaks directly, understanding different countries that needs to have sugar coating just so we don't become rude. I think that's an important book for any international or global marketer. Communications, even sales,
in sales,
need to read
sure.
about. Yeah.
What would be your most favorite book that you've read this year? Or actually, let me open it up to that you've read so far.
That's I love. Okay, I will mention three.
Okay.
No, actually two. And these are from the same author, Paulo Coelho. He is not everyone's favorite, but he is my favorite literature writer. There are two books that I love from him. The first one is a classic, not The Alchemist. People know him from The Alchemist, but I love By the River Piedra, I Sat Down and Wept. It took a very towards the end there's a plot twist that I just like, oh my god, this is such a lovely book, I love it. And the way he writes the story, it's a fiction, the way he writes the story is also very, alluring, very soft, very easy to read, and also it kind of like it felt like it's a cradle, you're being cradled by your mom. And the second one is a more recent one he published, I think in the I'm not sure, but it's more recent than the previous one. It's called The Archer. This book is not like your usual novel. It's not a thick, lengthy novel. It's more to like paragraphs. I forgot what it's called in literature, but it's more paragraphs and a little bit of shorter chapters. And it tells you about the archer. It tells you about the bow itself. It tells you about the wood. It tells you about the creation of the wood. So it's like a big metaphor of life and challenges and how to win. But again, it's in a way that he tells it that made me feel like I am with a safe blanket. This book is not judging me. This book is more to like providing me warmth and validation that what I am going through, the archer is going through. Something like that. But yeah.
And this goes a little bit into the next question I want to ask, because I think you're talking about, okay, you find comfort in this, and you found somewhat of your passion or your purpose in some way. When you were working in Malaysia at this agency, there was a video that they made. I'm not sure if it's a video that they made or a video that you made through Women Works.
Oh, okay.
That you were a mentor at. So again, for people that don't know about this, Women Works is it's a mentorship platform for women in Malaysia. Also in Indonesia. Indonesia. You were a mentor there as well. In that video, most of it was in Bahasa, but there was parts of it that was in English. You mentioned about being very particular about finding your why.
Yes.
I want to know how you found your why.
Oh my god. Okay. How I found my why is really through a lot of journaling, a lot of talking to other people, a lot of trying things and then just like, this is actually not for me. A lot of like being greedy and then only to realize I'm being greedy about the wrong things. And then a lot of like being selfish, but also then being very selfless. There's just a lot of me throughout my entire life. And I think I've only found out, quote unquote, the exact reason why about this year or last year. But throughout the 26 years of life, I exposed myself through two different types of polar opposites of wanting to, when I was, I think when I was 15 or 18, I wanted to be an astronaut. And obviously I failed chemistry, so I realized, okay, never mind that. And then I want to be a marketing person. I tried that. Oh, never mind. I wanted communications. I went to communications and I was like, oh, never mind. I actually want marketing. And then I was like, oh, I actually want to do cooking Instagram reels for PCOS stuff. Oh, never mind that. I actually wanted to do writing. And I just like, oh, maybe from the outside looking in, people will judge me and see, maybe not judge, but like they will be questioning like, oh, Anissa, like why do you move so fast? Why do you, and I've got this question a lot. Anissa, why are you moving so fast? Aren't you exhausted? And my answer is absolutely, absolutely. I'm exhausted all the time. But I also feel that exhaustion and compare, oh, am I more exhausted when I am doing chemistry or when I'm doing civics learnings? Which one do I enjoy the exhaustion more? So it's finding my why is really through letting myself make as many mistakes as possible, exposing myself to different types of people, really learning, oh, I don't like these type of people with this ambition. I like this one because it shares the same value to me. This one is not for me. This one is for me. And really, really be truthful to myself. Anissa, why do you actually not like this? Is it because you cannot do it, so you tell yourself you don't like it? Or it's because you actually is more interested in that? So first, really trial and error. Second is really be honest. Be honest as possible to yourself. And third is the validation from other people. So after all the trial and errors, you can narrow down things to a couple of things maybe, and then you educate yourself in those couple of things, and then you try to excel in that couple of things. And then once you receive feedback from other people like, hey, Anissa, actually what you're doing is very, very good. I think you're talented in that it seals the deal.
Yep.
And that is your why.
I feel like you even at a young age, you have a somewhat aligned direction as to what your purpose looked like and what your why looked like.
Yeah.
And this story was when you were in Malaysia working for this agency. How do you feel your purpose to have changed from that point onwards to right now? And what are you most looking forward to?
Great question. As always, I think it hasn't really changed as much. It's more it's more now the why or the purpose or the objective of my life is more heavy and solid and grounded, and I'm now more aligned with this objective. Instead of it being, too broad, it's now very specific. And it's as specific as I want to create impact in for the world, not only for other people. I want to go ambitious. I want to go make impact to others through my works, whatever it is, to eventually the world. And sorry, I forgot the second question.
What are you most looking forward to?
Yes, correct. What I most look forward to really is there are two versions. The first version is the ambitious side of Anissa. Obviously, she is looking forward to having a larger platform to share experiences with others. Because she also wants to learn. She does not only want to tell, but she also wants to learn more, because learning is obviously continuous. But the second one is also, after that, maybe one day I will learn onto how to be a good global marketer or whatever. After that specific day, I am looking forward to go home to becoming Anissa as the wife and a cat mom. Because really nothing is, I think my priorities have shifted as well. It's usually just like work. The top 5 priorities is just work, friends. But now it's like work, family, cat, and friends.
And friends.
So I think, yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to really in the future. I wanted to make more global networks. I want to learn from different types of people and their backgrounds, there are so many things in a life that have shifted. I feel like this new reality, what we were talking about earlier, is like a field of new opportunities for people to do new things and error in new things. We are no longer, it feels like I'm, you know, what do you call when a crab is moving out of their old body and then the crab has a new shell? It's like that, you know, it felt like that. And yeah, so that's what I'm looking forward to together with everyone else.
For sure. And just before getting into the last few questions, I also want to also mention this on the podcast because these are some things that I felt that you had achieved before, and you're not just nurturing that inner child of yours that wants to create impact in the world and actually has. You've hosted a lot of series in terms of women in tech. You were a moderator for your current for an event at your current company. You hosted a leadership talk with Eliza Knox. I think that was probably one of the one of the better series that I've seen that you've hosted. You've done Break the Bias International Women's Day. You used to mentor, and I don't know if you're still mentoring in Women Works. So that and this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's much more to all of this. There's one question that our previous guests asked without knowing this was going to be you. This question is, what was the most difficult decision you had to make in your life and why?
Amazing question. I actually have never thought of it. This is a new reflection question that I will take home. The hardest decision for me to make is when I am not informed and I need to do it, and it's all of a sudden. It's the type of decisions where I have no context to, I have no background of, and that I have to still make a decision. And to be honest with you, it's not only that it didn't only happen back then. It happened a lot of times. In life, a lot of these types of questions, decisions will come up to you and it will take you by surprise. So how I have helped myself in making those type of decisions, because obviously it's inevitable, is I just go with my gut feeling and I really ask the necessary questions. I go with my gut feeling, and I have this belief in my heart that I have been carrying for years now. And also it's an Instagram reel meme. Whatever is, will is. It will never are.
It will never are.
So whatever decision you make, be it right or wrong, be it hard or easy, it will be for you. Whatever in this life is for you. It will never come to other people. It will never go to other people. And if it does, then it's not for you. And that's the type of peace that you have to make for yourself. Yeah, that's that.
Thank you for answering this question. I hope the previous guests also really loved this answer from you, and I'm pretty sure a lot of the listeners for this episode are going to find not just inspiration but also know a much more nuanced, much more vulnerable Annisa from today's podcast. Final question. If you could ask any question to the next guest, what question would that be?
What keeps you going? Through the hard times, through the easy times, what keeps you going?
What keeps you going through the hard times and also the easy times?
Yes.
All right. Cool. So thank you again, Annisa, for coming on the podcast. I was very excited. I'm so excited to share this with everyone, and I know that your journey has been a difficult one, especially this year with all that you've gone through. I think the few words that I have to kind of encapsulate this year was resilience through growth. I don't know if you like that, but
I love it.
well, how would you summarize your year?
I would summarize it. Resilience is the right word. I agree. Resilience and the capability to adapt, to thrive, really. So yeah, that's a really good summary, Coco.
Amazing. Thanks for being an inspiration.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you for listening to the story. If you found value or enjoyed this, my ask is to share this with someone who might benefit from this as much as you did. You can also support by clicking the Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes and subscribing on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you again and have a great day. See you on the next one.